From the heart of Hawkeye Nation comes the show that dissects the plays, debates the calls, and celebrates the victories. This isn't just a podcast. This is your unfiltered access to the mind of two diehard fans. They live and breathe black and gold, and they're here to give you the honest, raw takes you won't find anywhere else. Get ready for deep dive analysis, passionate debate, and a unique perspective on the team you love. This is Punting is Winning with JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye sports fans, to another episode of Punting is Winning, your all Iowa podcast. We are your hosts, Keith and JD. Welcome back. Sunday afternoon, January 11th. Not been a real fun week to talk Iowa sports other than maybe some transfer portal additions, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, let's take care of some business from last week. We asked question of the week last week was, where do you think Iowa will finish in the final poll rankings for football when those come out? Still got time to answer that because we haven't had the final polls come out. Those won't come out until after the national championship game next Monday. So you've got some time still. Nobody had actually answered. I think you had said 18th. I said 17th. I kind of figured like 17th, and then Vandy will probably end up 18th, just because that was a close enough game that knowing them, they'll probably put Vandy at 16th and us at 17th because, that just makes sense because it's SEC bias. Anyway, question of the week this week.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
All right.
go ahead.
Where do you think at this point in the season, where do you anticipate the Iowa women and the Iowa men basketball finishing in the Big Ten conference standings? Now, after the last two games for the men, I might have to reevaluate, but I think they showed some fight and whatnot. But I think there was there's been a lot of illness going around Iowa City lately. Got some friends that live in Iowa City that work at the hospital there, and it's been a pretty heavy influx of hospitalized people with this new flu variant that's going around, and it sounds like the team was hitting it because based on what I saw today, it looked like Bennett Sturts had it and was trying to play through it, and Tavion Banks had it as well. And I don't know. I don't want to use that as an excuse because they just have started very poor the last two games and then had to fight back. But we'll get into that. Let's start out with the women's first. They had a one game this week at Northwestern earlier in the week. I'll let you go ahead and take the reins on that one.
What might have been the ugliest game that I've seen them play in 2 years.
Yeah.
And actually what that did was that played in Northwestern's hands. That's exactly what Northwestern wanted to do, was muddy the game, get it ugly, limit possessions, because from a talent standpoint, Northwestern does not have the talent that Iowa has. So their best bet was to do a lot of times what the Iowa football team does, is they muddy the water, slow things down, try to limit your possessions, and
Force you to play their game.
Force you into their strategy and the way they play. So that's exactly what Northwestern did, and I'll give them credit. For 3/4 of that game, I was unsure of who was going to come out on top of that game. Finally, even though Iowa led, 50-44 at the half, I just never felt like that game was really in control at any point. And but getting the win, 67-58, Iowa led by Eva Heiden's 23 points in only 19 minutes. She was fighting some foul trouble. Journey Houston paced Iowa with 6 rebounds, while Chit Chat Wright contributed 7 assists. Iowa shot 44% to Northwestern's 36% from the field. Iowa shot 30% from the three-point line, and Northwestern followed with 24%. From the free throw line, Iowa shot 69% and Northwestern shot 79%. Iowa out-rebounded Northwestern 32-27. But also the bugaboo about Iowa is their turnovers. They had 19 turnovers, which is way too many to Northwestern's only 16, which is still way too many for both teams.
Yeah.
The turnovers and the slow pace of play, the limiting possessions, the fouls, it just seemed like it was one of the ugliest games that you'd ever want to watch.
I do know that based on what I heard, Chit Chat Right was dealing with illness as well. Again, not an excuse, but yeah, a couple of things stood out to me in that game. They just felt like they were going through the motions at times. They just really didn't feel that energetic. But in the same sense, I think Iowa could have won by 20 if Hannah Stolke could make a layup.
Yeah, well.
I mean, I'm sorry. She's missing from point blank range.
Was she 2 of 11 on the? I think she was 2-11 from the field that day. For two out of 11, and I don't think she even did. She make 50% of her free throws too. I don't know, it was like 4 of 8.
Yeah, she did not play well, and I think she would even be the first to admit she didn't play well. Yes, she got beat up a little bit. She got the scratch by her eye and whatnot, but that's only going to affect you. And it's not like it's dripping down into your eye; it's down on your cheek. Yeah, it stings a little bit, but that shouldn't affect how you shoot a layup or how you shoot a free throw. She's got to get that figured out. She's a senior. This is stuff that should be second nature to her. Missing layups, that point blank is just I don't know what you do about that. That's going to cost you games if you continue that.
I think sometimes
maybe it doesn't against a Northwestern or something, but it will against a higher quality team.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think sometimes she expects to be fouled when she's not, and then she puts the ball up a little bit too hard, and it bounces a little bit too much off the backboard, and it goes over the rim, or it bounces off the rim, and it just I'm not sure what her mentality and what her thought process is. I think sometimes she gets bumped midair. It does throw off her shot a little bit, but still, she's made those plays in the past, and I'm not sure why now it's become such an issue. I don't know whether it's in her head or if it's a situation where, she's just not focused as much as she needs to be. I'm not sure.
I mean, as a senior and an all Big Ten player, you should have figured out how to play through that contact at this point. It's not like they're playing you any differently than they've played you the last 4 years. But in the same sense, the games are being called differently now too. I think there's so much inconsistency in officiating, men's and women's. That it's hard to know as a player what you can and cannot get away with and what's going to get called and what's not going to get called. You go up strong and you get bodied and, it throws off your shot and there's nothing called. And then on the other end, the same thing happens and you get called for a foul. And it's just setting precedent of, you don't know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
If you're going to, I don't care if an official wants to call ticky-tack fouls, but you got to call it on both ends. And if you're consistent about it, okay. Now players know how to adjust to that. Okay, I can't really breathe on this person, so I got to play a little looser on the defensive side. I can't body up this person like I would normally do. Or, I get away with a little bit more contact than I normally would because this official's not calling it. But you've got to be consistent as an official and be, let them know right away, hey, this is how I'm going to call the game. You can't switch midstream and start calling, oh my gosh, now I'm going to start calling everything that's a touch foul is a foul. You got to be consistent. And that's the one thing that officiating is seriously lacking, is consistency.
Yeah, no, I agree. I sometimes I feel like the referees completely switch their philosophy as far as fouls goes from one half to the other. And that's unfortunate because I think sometimes, it's okay if you're going to go into that first half and say, okay, we're going to allow a little bit more than what we would normally. But then things start getting out of control on you and things are getting a little rougher than what you suspect they should. Then all of a sudden now you reverse 180 degrees and say, okay, every little tic-tac foul now is going to get called. And that just throws everyone into a complete chaos. They don't know which end is up and don't know if you can't touch somebody or if you can fall into them and throw them into the backboard. Hey, that, you can't change midstream. You have to say, okay, go to the teams when they're having a timeout and say, hey, look, here's what's going on. We want to get this curtailed. We're going to start calling this a little closer. So, prepare yourselves.
be forewarned.
Be forewarned that this is what's going to happen. We're starting to lose control. We let you play a little bit. It's starting to get out of control. We need to get this ring back in. We're going to be a little bit more watchful of what's going on. And, things that you got away with maybe in the first half, we may not be able to allow you to get away with it in the second half. And if that's what you're going to do, that's fine. But you better let both teams know that.
Yeah.
That you've let them play in the first half. You lost control a little bit. You want to rein it back in. Don't just do it on your own and then expect them to adjust to it. But if you tell them ahead of time, like a timeout, then, if you let both teams know exactly the same way, then they both should be able to adjust to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to play the conspiracy theorist or anything, but it just seems like, and I haven't watched a ton of other teams, like non-Iowa games, let's say. But it seems like Iowa is the
recipient.
How
the recipient of bad calls?
More often than not, yes. But what I'm trying to get at is, how a lot of times your stars get a favorable whistle, they may be able to get away with a little bit more. It's not happening in Iowa. And I don't know if it's a situation where officials or the conference has said, no, hey, we don't want, like with, let's say, the men's side, he's got to pay his dues. He's fresh, new into this conference. We're not just going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. You're going to have to pay your dues. I think that's a bunch of crap if it is the case, because like you got a guy, and we'll get into this more on the men's side, but let's take a look at the women's side. Eva Heiden. Eva Heiden gets called for the most ticky-tack stuff you could possibly get called for. And it's easy to identify that she's the best player on the floor for us. So is it, hey, we're going to take that away from you because, hey, we don't like you. We don't like your coach. We don't like something your university has done. I don't know. I mean, I'm not wanting to play the conspiracy theorist, but it does seem like that does take place more often than not lately. I don't know. Am I crazy? Do you see that as well?
I kind of do. The Eva Heiden situation, especially the other night, Iowa, came out against Northwestern, and the first three shots that were made were Eva Heiden, and she was easy under the basket. I mean, they were just drop-in layups, and then all of a sudden, bang bang, two fouls, and she's on the bench. She literally played less than half of the game, and she's the best player we have. She scored 23 points in 19 minutes. So you take that away. I think what you do at that point is you take away the chance Iowa has of running away with the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, unfortunately, if you want to keep the game close, I guess you call it like that. But if you want to, have an easy time and let the game get out of hand, as far as from a referee standpoint, I don't know. Is it better to let the game get out of hand, or is it better to call it close and keep it a close game? I'm not sure.
Well, they need to just let the game play out. If it's going to be a blowout, it's going to be a blowout.
I agree.
That's fine. That's the difference in talent levels.
See, I just wonder sometimes though if the TV revenue or the TV people say you need to keep this game close because if this is a 20-point game, people are going to go watch something else.
Yeah, and that's
we have
possible.
To keep this close.
Money dictates a lot of things anymore, and it detracts from the level of enjoyment of a sport, knowing that there are situations where, officials could be being paid off. Television revenue is dictating how an official plays or officiates a game or how a player plays a game. Conferences step in and say, no, we want to make sure these games are close because we need to have the revenue. We need to have the eyeballs on this game. We can't let this team just roll through unimpeded because the national narrative would be, oh, they didn't play anybody at all. And then we have to deal with that. Now, I don't know what it is, but it seems very prevalent and it seems to be getting worse and worse by the year. And I don't know if it's because of the revenue sharing, the NIL, just like most things, it comes down to money, I'm sure. Money is all evil, and it will ruin our sport.
And maybe we're seeing this through biased eyes too.
That could be too.
We'll have to look at that. But
I just don't. I look at free throw disparities. for teams, and it's just like Iowa is like one of those attacking type of teams, moving the ball around, not necessarily, and more on the men's side, I realize, but they are trying to get to the rim and they're not getting calls. They're getting bodied, they're getting thrown around, they're getting beat up and no call. But on the other end, the same thing happens and it's, that's foul on you. I don't understand it. And it makes it very, very difficult to want to watch.
Right.
So if their intention is to keep games close, to keep viewership, by doing that, you're losing viewership because people can see beyond that and see through the ruse of, it makes it unenjoyable, makes it hard to watch.
Well, let's just go with the adage of we got to play harder and we've got to work through that and adapt to all of the whatever we have to face, adversity and that kind of thing, and just play the games out and do the best you can, and hopefully you come out on top. Usually the better talented team usually does win regardless of the officiating. So Iowa plays Indiana in about 1 hour from now. This is 3:00 Central right now. Then they play Thursday in Iowa City with Oregon. Oregon that is an 8:00 game on FS1. Oregon is 14-3 and 2-2 in the conference. Well, all right, now before the Indiana game, Iowa's 13-2 and 4-0 in the conference. Hopefully they can get through Indiana. Indiana's not the Indiana of old that give Iowa fits every year, especially when Caitlin Clark was there. Remember, it was always Iowa, Indiana, Nebraska, and
we don't know yet.
Ohio State. So we're hoping
this is a team that'll give them a lot of fits, but it is an assembly hall, and
yes,
it's never fun to try to play on the road in this conference at all.
Right. Well, good luck to the women on at 4:00, and hopefully they can take a W out of there and then take care of business at home against Oregon. Hopefully we can get Kylie Feuerbach back. She's really good on defense. So, if you get a player like Britt Prince the other night against Nebraska when she was going off, if you could stick Kylie in her face and play defense on her, put our best defensive player on their best offensive player, it might have helped us a little bit. But if we can get her back, get her over her ankle issue, and maybe we can get her out today and playing. I haven't seen the ins and outs on who's playing today.
I haven't either.
So we'll just assume that she's ready to play, hopefully, and we'll get her back. You want to switch over to men's? You got anything more with the women's?
Nope.
Okay. Kind of a rough week for the men this week. An away game with Minnesota, a loss, 70-67, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's what I read. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I did not get to see a lot of that game. I had other things going on at that time, and I didn't get to see it, but I did see a little bit of it. And it just appeared that Iowa just has been having, especially today, I saw some of the game today, a lot of the game today, and it just seemed like slow starts for Iowa. Shot not falling, not shooting well early, then kind of picking it up midway through the first half, but then falling behind again, starting the second half slow. This was the kind of the recipe for both games this week. Mm-hmm. The loss at Minnesota and the loss with Illinois, we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But you especially when you're talking about Minnesota, that is a game that you could very easily have won that game. And probably should have won. These are the games that if you let those slip by, you have to take somebody at home that you aren't supposed to win. And that's where Illinois came in. I thought, well, if we lose to Minnesota and we get Illinois at home, then maybe we don't fall. We stay in the rankings, and which at this point, it's early. It's January rankings to me. I mean, yeah, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see Iowa with a number in front of their name. Obviously, you always want to see that. You want to see them having success. You want to see them winning games. 0-2, that's a little disheartening. Is the sky falling? No. But they are being a little bit exposed. And I think what's happening is they're putting their best guard on Sturtz and saying, limit his touches, limit him to if he gets the ball, you better have it 35 feet out from the basket, and you better force him to pass the ball. And that's what's happening. And Minnesota did that. even though he did lead the team. Sturts did lead the team with 21 points in just 29 minutes. I think he had a little foul trouble early too. But that seemed to be like the recipe for stopping Iowa is someone else needs to step up and become that threat. And at this point, I haven't really seen it, that somebody's stepping up and saying, all right, I'll lead the team and get 18 to 20 points. Now, Banks had 16 today, which was nice even when he was supposed to play. He was questionable. But it just seems to me like one of those situations where if you put your absolute best defensive guard on Sturts and force him away and make him work for his shots, you'll limit Iowa. Am I wrong?
Well, no, I totally agree. I will say that I think, and I watched quite a bit of that Minnesota game. I will say that I think that's probably one of the worst officiated games I've seen in a long, long time. It was bad. Those guys that did that game probably have no right to do another game the rest of this year, at least. That's how bad it was. And I don't want to sit there and blame it because, yeah, Iowa came out cold. They put themselves in a hole and they had to fight their way back. But when you do fight your way back, you shouldn't have things ripped away from you because of bad calls. And that seems to be the theme of the day. We saw bad calls in the Wisconsin or the Northwestern game for the women's game. We saw bad calls against Minnesota. I can honestly say I didn't watch much of the Illinois game today. I had some other things to do, and I started watching at the beginning. They got down really big. I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and get the stuff done that I need to get done because I'm running out of daylight here, so to speak. So I couldn't tell you if, officiating was questionable in my opinion or not, because I just saw a team that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in the first 5 minutes and the other team that couldn't miss.
Well,
and granted, some of those were pretty easy driving layups that was like, yeah, where's the defense on that?
Yeah.
So,
well, as Iowa's defense goes, so does Iowa, and I don't think they played defense really, really well in either one of those two games.
No.
But as far as today goes, really, to be honest, I didn't think the refereeing was that terrible. Illinois had 11 free throw attempts and Iowa had 6, which is not a lot for either team.
I wouldn't complain about that then.
Yeah. So, I'm not too worried about it, but this is another situation where I think Iowa just relies too much on Bennett Sturts to do it all for him. And don't get me wrong, he is definitely the straw that stirs the drink, no question about it. But I just don't think you can rely on him to be the absolute, 20-point plus scorer every game. You just, you're going to run into some defensive teams that really have some very quick guards that are just good defensive guards that keep him in check. You just got to have somebody like, Tavian Banks, Alvaro Figueres, Isaiah Howard. You got to have somebody step up. Cale Combs, somebody's got to step up and
watch.
Cam Manyow has done absolutely nothing. He didn't even score against Minnesota. And I don't even know if he scored today. I haven't looked at the stats to that. I didn't even write them down.
Seems like his minutes are diminishing.
He's undersized for his position.
Again, it could be, like I said, I know that there's the flu running around Iowa City right now. Maybe the team's together all the time. So that if one guy gets it, there's probably multiple guys that have it. Looked like Bennett Sturts was, at one point after a made shot, ball inbounded to him, he kicked it over to Cale Combs, and it was 4-on-5 for about 10 seconds because he walked up the court, which that is uncharacteristic.
Yeah, very uncharacteristic.
So it makes me think that, there's more going on than what we know. And I think it's from a health aspect of, I think there's a lot of guys on that team that are pretty sick right now. And that could contribute to the slow starts, the lack of energy, the lack of defensive intensity that we've seen up to the last 2 games. And maybe they get over this, they come back out and, we got Indiana this week and they just blow the doors off Indiana on the road. Who knows? Maybe they get healthy and we start to see the team that we expected to see again, that we've seen earlier in the season.
Yeah, they might as well, when they get to Indiana for that game, they might as well just book hotel rooms because they got to turn around and play Purdue over there on Saturday.
Yeah. Well,
So
the one thing I will say is I do like the fact that there is fight in them.
Yeah, they've tried to come back.
Down 17 and they come back and they cut it to 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's looking back at past experiences when teams would get up on Iowa by 17 to 20 points. It was
done.
You just might as well turn off the TV and go watch something else, because there is no way there's no way Iowa's coming back. Now, granted, there have been a couple of times, like the Michigan State game a few years back, that was a miracle.
That was an oddity.
But for the most part, you'd just be like, yeah, this game's over. You know it.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel it this time. Even though Iowa was down by 15 early, it's like I still feel like there's a chance they're going to come back and make this a game, or come back and steal this one.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, I would like to see it if this team was healthy and not under the weather, because I feel that's a big part of what's happened this last week. Like I said, you saw it with some of the girls in the girls game. I think they were dealing with it too against Northwestern, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And those teams tend to, they're in the same building a lot, so it's going to go around.
Yeah.
So let's just hope that's what it is.
We'll get to the Illinois game. That was a 75-69 loss at home. Like we said, another slow start. I was led by Tavian Banks with 16 points, who was actually questionable to start the game, as I said earlier. Alvaro Fagares had 8 rebounds, and Ben Sturts added 6 assists. I talked about this earlier. I just have notes here that says, that the teams are starting to smother Sturts, and Iowa has to find another scorer.
Well, and Iowa needs to the one thing that's become a little bit frustrating lately is there's great ball movement, but almost to the point where there's too much ball movement. You're moving the ball for the sake of moving the ball, instead of, I've got a good shot here, but I'm not 20 seconds deep into the shot clock yet, so I can't take it.
Sometimes I feel like they pass up good shots, and then they end up throwing the ball around and end up getting a tip taken away, or
a desperation heave because
a bad shot at the end of the shot clock. Yeah, and I've seen that happen a few times. So, Iowa, they've got a chance of redemption. They've got to go over to Indiana and play. That's Wednesday night. They play Indiana this week, or they play Purdue? They play Indiana on Wednesday, right?
They play Indiana for sure next.
I thought next week they play Purdue. Then they play Indiana on Saturday. So they play Purdue on Wednesday and Indiana on Saturday.
Ugh.
That's what I have written down. At Purdue at 5:30 on BTN. Then they play Indiana on Saturday the 17th at 1 p.m. on Fox. So Purdue, then Indiana. I just, at Purdue, weeknight.
That's not going to be easy.
No, that's especially as good as they're playing right now. They've only lost the one game to Iowa State. I don't think they're going to let themselves have that happen again the way they played. Sometimes it's a wake-up call. So, just root them on and hope for the best. Hopefully they don't embarrass themselves on Wednesday and, even maybe they come out on fire and get a big lead and stay ahead. Now, I know one thing, they got to pack the defense with them. If they don't play defense, they're not going to win.
Yeah. And, they're going up against probably arguably one of the best point guards in the country. So,
and hopefully they can get healthy and everybody's not, no one's sick with the flu.
Yeah. And maybe we can get lucky and Purdue will all be sick. Who knows? That'd be nice.
I don't know if I should say that we would be lucky in that, but I'd rather beat them straight up, but that's okay.
I'll take any win at this point that I can get. I don't care if it's up or wrong.
We're going to talk about the transfer portal real quick too, but I wanted to get your take on the 2 playoff games that we saw this week, Thursday night and Friday night. What were your thoughts on the Thursday night game? Pretty good game. Ole Miss and Miami. I kind of expected Miami to win that. They did. What was your thoughts?
Yeah. I have different thoughts than what a lot of the national media has, where they consider Miami an SEC team now for whatever reason. They got to have something to rest on their laurels. Miami has had a interesting path. They've had to beat some good teams.
Yeah.
And they've done it. I don't think they've faced anybody that's playing as well as Indiana. And, as good as Ohio State can be, I think Ohio State was sputtering at the end of the year for some reason.
They came out flat.
It's just very unusual for an Ohio State team.
Right.
Whereas Indiana is doing the exact opposite. They're getting better
Mm-hmm.
in the playoffs than with the end of the season. So I don't think you can take the commonality of opponents to heart there. So I don't know. I'm happy that that Miami beat Ole Miss, because I just knocked the SEC out, and that makes me ecstatic. I wish it was somebody other than Miami or Notre Dame that would do it. If it would have been like a Virginia or something, I would have been happy-go-lucky. But not a big fan of the Hurricanes because of history.
Mm-hmm.
They're hard to root for. It's kind of like Notre Dame, hard to root for. But in this sense, it was easier to root for them than it was Ole Miss.
Strictly because of affiliation of conference.
Yes.
That's all. It's not that we have anything against Ole Miss, but and the Lane Kiffin thing might have been the only other thing that I could think of that just having been coached by Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of his, never have been. I think that there's a lot of Mississippi fans that probably think the same thing now, that they didn't necessarily think that way before the season. But yeah, just to leave your team at the end of the season and just say, "Yeah, you're on your own. Sorry, I'm going to go coach LSU because I think it's a better opportunity for me when this team made it to the semifinals." I don't understand the logic. Maybe they threw a checkbook at him and said, "Name the price, and we'll pay."
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, which I don't understand. He hasn't really garnered that much
No.
goodwill to do that, but that's okay. Indiana, Oregon. Did you see that coming?
Outcome as expected. I watched most of it.
Yeah.
Outcome as expected.
Margin?
As far as margin of victory, no, that was not expected.
Yeah.
With the absolute ease Indiana had at putting Oregon away and putting them away early, that surprised me. Not that it surprised me that Indiana could do it. It just surprised me that they did do it.
Now, I thoroughly expected Indiana to win. In fact, last week on the podcast, we said, who you see in the championship game? And I said Indiana, Miami, and, it's on record there. But the reason I felt that way is I just felt like Indiana is hitting on all cylinders right now. And even though Oregon had a couple of nice wins coming in the JMU game, they pretty much had that one in hand early. And they put Texas Tech away, who's not a bad team. They put them away relatively easily, too. I mean, not that just the margin of victory, what is it, 23-0 or 26-0, whatever it was. Just
because I think it was 16-0 they scored towards the end.
Okay, 23-0. Okay, so 23-0, you beat a team, Texas Tech, that's a pretty good team. And I thought, well, they're hitting pretty good. They're doing really well. But man, when I saw Indiana, just the way they've been playing, the way they took out Alabama, the way that they started that first half. Honestly, I see Indiana winning this game against Miami by probably 10 points or more. I just don't see Indiana losing to them.
I don't either. I don't know. I know that Miami has a pretty stout defense, and they're tested. They've had one more game to throw in there, which I guess technically they haven't, because Indiana played in that championship game for the conference and Miami didn't. So they're equal in amount of games, but they've had that extra game in the playoffs to play. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about this Indiana team that won't let me pick against them by any means. I've been burned doing that for 2 years now, and I won't do it again. I don't know. It's kind of like it's to me, it feels like I'm rooting for them simply because they're like the little underdog guy that they're the common folk team. They're not the big name universities, but granted they are a well-funded university.
They are this year.
But you look at the caliber of talent that they have. They're not ranking in the 5-star guys that the Alabamas and the Oregons and the Texas are raking in. They're doing it with guys who have been in the system long enough and are experienced, which that I'll get into here in the transfer portal stuff for Iowa. But it's like the everyday man's team to root for.
Yeah, I agree. Their history has shown that they are one of the worst teams of NCAA history, and they were never very good ever. And now this year they're a juggernaut, which is, hey, they were good last year too. They just didn't have enough to get over the hump last year, but this year they do. And will I feel the same way about them next year if they're in the same position?
No, probably not.
I will probably be like, okay, we need to end this now, and somebody needs to take care of this and get it. Maybe I will, but I doubt it. I feel like, okay, Indiana, go win your national title, go win your national championship, and now you can go back to being where you were. That's kind of the way I feel. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't feel that way. Maybe I should be like, as long as you're a Big Ten team and you're going to have every chance in the world to knock off anything from SEC, Big 12, or any of the others, then hey, I'm all for you.
I don't know. There's certain Big Ten teams that I'd have a hard time rooting for in this situation too.
Penn State.
Well, that's one. Yes.
Nebraska.
That team out west and that team up north.
Yeah. Well, I don't hate Minnesota because it's just a constant beat down for them. So it's like we just don't. There's nothing there to hate anymore. It used to. Well, it's too easy anymore.
Nebraska too, though.
Well, I know, but they just make it so they just keep running their mouth is a problem.
Yeah. Well,
you're sitting there punching Minnesota has the who hates, just keep running their mouth.
Minnesota has who hates Iowa. We hate Iowa, and they do it at games where Iowa isn't even involved in. So there's that.
Yeah, but they're like the little guy on the sidelines that's just trying. He's just trying to make himself relevant, and he just can't get it done. Well, Nebraska was relevant, but they're not what they used to be, and they just sit there and keep running their mouth. They're the guy that pop them in the nose, and they still keep running their mouth.
Nebraska is the guy that peaked in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
Minnesota is the kid who goes in with his bigger friends and tries to pick a fight when he walks into the bar, and then backs away because he can't pack it up.
Right.
And Penn State's just the one who takes you into the bathroom and does whatever he wants to you. We'll just leave it at that.
Yikes.
Anyway.
Yeah, let's move on to the transfer portal.
Move on to the transfer portal.
Most everybody wants to listen for anyway. That's the thing right now. It's the main attraction. Let's start with subtractions. The one that probably shocked most people, including myself, Cohen and Tringer leaving. What's your thought?
Yeah, it surprised me as well, especially after he said, "Oh yeah, I'm coming back," and
you just didn't say.
It's a situation where I think somebody was going to throw a bag at him, and then they backed away. Probably. And then he kind of had to pivot because he's like, "Oh crap, I already burned my bridge here." It looks like. So he commits to Louisville, which is a step down defensively by all means. Now Louisville and in their incredible history of football, which is so vast and broad, have run their mouth of, well, at least we have an offense, which clearly they don't look at the final rankings because they finished 12 spots below Iowa in offense. So, run your mouth a little bit more, act like you've been there once in a while. I did see that Brian Allen committed to
Vanderbilt. Yeah.
It surprises me, but hey, they have the money to throw at him.
And that coach down there, he's a pretty charismatic guy.
Yeah.
He could, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him coaching on the sidelines at Iowa at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he's an alumnus at Vanderbilt, so I don't see him ever wanting to leave there.
Right.
unless he gets fired from there, he's probably going to retire from there.
Yeah, I just have a lot of respect for the way he handled himself in that ball game.
I as
much
well.
more than most.
The two most surprising. And then you had Jazz Patterson and Reese Dakin both committed to Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else has committed at this point that I have seen.
Not that I know of. However, we did pick up. We did have another guy, CJ Bell. He has also entered the transfer portal, which was a freshman.
Kind of surprises me a little bit. I thought he was going to be in line for some, from what I'd heard, as far as how he'd been progressing, was in line for some playing time this coming year. But maybe, they feel very comfortable with Jalen Watson and Zach Lutmer at corner, and is Deshaun Lee back for another year?
I think so.
Maybe they feel comfortable in him getting the experience and getting better next year. So their depth at corner was a little higher. They've had some people. I think they felt good enough about their corner depth that guys that were, like an Olante Dean, who was going to be in the backfield, has moved over to the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. So safety was definitely a concern, and I think they've addressed that in the portal.
They've more than addressed that in the portal.
Yeah.
Let's start with additions. Here's one, LJ Phillips, a South Dakota running back who led the FCS in rushing. He's a 5'9", 225-pound running back. He ran for 1,920 yards last season, 19 rushing touchdowns, with 28 receptions for 195 yards and a TD. He has 2 seasons of eligibility remaining.
He kind of reminds me, from the clips that I watched, of a Caleb Johnson,
but much smaller,
Sean Green hybrid type guy with a little bit of power behind him, but smaller.
But
he's built. It's 225 is a pretty big kid.
Yeah, that's a big kid for
Sean Green was 235 at 5'10", and Caleb Johnson was 6'1" and 230.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, I see similarities in their styles, though, but I really like this pickup. This was one of them that I was like, I hope this kid comes to Iowa, picked us over Penn State. Sorry, Matt Campbell, but you've got enough already as it is. You can keep getting your Iowa State cast-offs, and that's fine. We'll see how well Iowa State would compete in the Big Ten on a daily or a weekly basis, because your team's basically Iowa State light at Penn State. So we'll see how it goes.
He's going to be in the running back room with Kamari Moulton and Nathan McNeil, Xavier Williams, and then you have this LJ Phillips. It'll be interesting if anybody else decides to transfer out.
Makes me wonder if, Olante Dean can move back to the defensive side, or if he will move back to the defensive side.
We'll see. Let's talk about the next guy that we picked up, Tony Diaz, a wide receiver from Texas Rio Grande Valley. I'm not sure. Are they Division I AA, kind of similar to Northern Iowa? Or are they?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. He's 5'11", 176 pounds. He had 67 receptions for 881 yards, 11 touchdowns. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining.
Speedster too.
Yeah.
And looks like he's got hands like Sam Phillips.
Well, as long as we've got a quarterback that can throw him the ball and will throw him the ball, then I think he'll be happy here. But that remains to be seen. We need to see if the current quarterback, whoever that may be, the successor to Mark Gronowski, can throw the ball down the field and has the ability and the leeway, the permission to throw the ball down the field.
Based on comments that I'd seen this kid make before, something is different. Something's going to be different next year, because he was wanting to go someplace where they were going to throw the ball a lot. And that does not scream Iowa by any means. So they had to sell him on something. And I'm wondering if, Tim Lester's saying, finally, it's year 3 and I've got full control of this offense and I'm allowed to do what I want. And we're going to throw the ball around. And because clearly something had to have been said to this kid to get him to come here.
Well, probably the same,
especially over Alabama.
probably the same spiel that was given to Sam Phillips and to Seth Anderson and all the guys that ran their routes and got their conditioning in every Saturday without getting the ball thrown to them. I just hope that Iowa has dedicated themselves to, like I said on a podcast or two ago, throwing the ball more often than they have been. I mean, you're not going to have the Mark Gronowski that's going to take off and run the ball and get you the yards you need and the first downs you need. I don't think that guy comes around just doesn't come around every day. So, if Jeremy Hecklinski or Seth Brown or whoever happens to be the quarterback at Iowa, if they don't pick somebody up in the transfer portal, it's one of the guys that's already here. If we don't get those guys to throw the ball down the field and use the receivers as what they're supposed to be used for, instead of for just blocking for the running backs, then you may open up that ability to enhance kids, get them in here, get them enticed into playing for Iowa at some point down the line. And that will only help with your running, with your wide receiver room. Yeah. And you're going to get those speedsters that say, yes, I see Iowa's throwing the ball. They threw for 3,500 yards this year. And the receivers got, 16 touchdown passes this year, or 18, or whatever the case may be. That way, then you can entice them into saying, okay, you can be highlighted here at this school. You can be thrown to. You will get your catches. At this point,
like I said,
over the last 5 years, I don't think Iowa can even begin to say that.
No. So clearly there's something, they're selling them on something.
Yeah.
So, because this, like I said, this kid was very adamant about wanting to go someplace where he was going to get the ball, and they were throwing the ball around. So they had to have sold him on something. Otherwise, I wouldn't expect him to be here at all.
Do you feel like he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be like opposite Reese Vanderzee? They're going to be one on one side, one on the other, and it's going to be that's the two starters? Or do you think somebody like KJ Parker is going to step in since he's been at the program for a year or two?
Just depends. I mean, the big bugaboo with KJ Parker hasn't shown the best ability to catch the ball.
Well, how about Jarriett Bowie or somebody like along that line? Dayton Howard, yeah. Dayton Howard's caught the ball. He caught it pass in the bowl game.
I think there's talent in the wide receiver room. It's just, I mean, now we just got to get the talent in the quarterback room to throw him the ball.
Yeah.
And be not afraid to throw. Because I think that's been the biggest problem is the quarterbacks have been afraid to throw unless they're wide open.
Yeah.
And the mentality of don't make a mistake.
And I was watching Mendoza the other night when they were playing against Oregon, and he was throwing passes based on where the kids are going to be and if you can tell whether they're going to break open or not. And he was so accurate with that ball. And there were times when he was throwing a ball to a receiver that was not open, and they were still coming down with the catch. But sometimes you have to make those plays. You have to make that attempt to see what you have. Mm-hmm. And, Mendoza was making those plays. I grant you, he is definitely the most talented quarterback this year, and he is definitely deserving of the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion, after what I've seen in this playoff. Yep. But you're not going to have that at Iowa. You're not going to have that Heisman Trophy quarterback. You haven't had somebody like that since, Brad Banks that could throw the ball like that. And I'm not sure Brad could throw the ball like that. He was good. I don't think he was as good as Mendoza. Then you got Chuck Long back in the mid-'80s.
Beathard maybe
85
was
and 86.
The most accurate recently.
Okay. Yeah. So you've got to get somebody in there of that caliber that can throw. Get these guys. They can get open. Yeah. It's just the level of you can't wait for them to break 10 yards open. That's just not how it works. If you're not going to throw the ball because they don't get 10 yards open by 10 yards over their defender, that's not going to happen.
Well, how about stuff like what Reese Vanderzee showed? He doesn't have to be open to make catches.
Why did we wait till
in a place where he can try to make a catch, and he'll come down with it?
Why did we wait till game 13 to throw for over 200 yards? That's the part that bothers me more than anything is, the first game, Mark Gronowski, 44 yards. Second game, 88 yards. I grant you, he got better as the year got on. We can't wait till the end of the season, the very end of the season, to throw for 200 yards. And it was only 212. It wasn't like it was 250 to 260. And did you feel like 212 yards was like a breakout? Did you feel like, oh my God, we're really throwing the ball? So our expectations have been set so low that even when he does something that's most teams consider mediocre at
Middling.
best, we feel like it's the breakout. It's like the best game he's thrown all year. That's the sad part of our fandom, is that we've allowed ourselves to be dumbed down to what we expect. Just don't expect a whole lot, because you're not going to see it. And that's where I'm upset that we're bringing all these wide receivers in that have these supposed, lower tier accolades that are great. And we're all of a sudden going to turn them into, Michael Irvin or something. And we're not. We don't have the quarterback for it. I don't think we have the quarterback or the wide receiver coach for it. I don't feel like that we are set up for a wide receiver to come here and have success.
Well, I think this is a make it or break it year for the offense. If they can't show the improvement this year, then I don't think they'll ever show the improvement.
No, that might be right.
If they can come out and have a breakout year this year, then I think, we might have finally turned the corner. We think we've hit on something here, but it's to be seen. We'll see. The one thing I will say, and I don't want to go in through all the different ones that we brought in. We did bring in, some 3 safeties and some defensive linemen, and there was an offensive lineman from JMU that came over. What I will say that I know you said, where are all the Power 4 kids? And I said, well, we can't afford them, which I still hold true to that. I don't think we can afford the Power 4 guys that have Power 4 experience. However, I don't have an issue with getting FCS All-Americans, because that is legitimately equivalent to, some very good second string guys out of Power 4 school, if not some fringe starters at Power 4 schools. So I don't have a problem with that. Now, if we were just getting FCS guys that, let's say a running back that ran for 250 yards in his career at FCS, and this is going into his 3rd year, I'd be like, yeah, that doesn't move the needle at all. But a kid that rushed for 2,000 yards at an FCS school probably is good enough to be a second string guy or a backup running back at a Power 4 school, if not a fringe starter. Same thing when it comes to wide receivers, because not everybody can go the Division I FBS route. Some guys can't go that because of grades. Some guys can't go that because of late blooming, and they just didn't get the recognition, so they had to drop down to the FCS level and show it for a year or two. But look at the guys that are playing at Indiana. A lot of those guys were FCS guys that moved up to the FBS level at JMU. Now you've got guys at JMU. These, we got, 3 guys from JMU?
2 for sure.
2 of them for sure, I know. Offensive lineman and a safety. Mm-hmm. These are guys that just came off of a playoff team.
Yeah.
And these were guys that played.
Played.
This isn't just
one starter.
This isn't just a backup or a guy that was on the bench or just happened to be on that team. These are starters on that team.
Yeah, one starter and one guy that played a lot.
I know they're looking at a kid from Furman.
I know they just got a kid from Robert Morris.
Yeah, that's the other safety. There's a kid from Furman that's I want to say Evan James.
Okay, I don't have him written down here. So
he is I think it's Evan James, wide receiver from Furman.
He hasn't committed yet.
No, he is there today, I believe, at the basketball game. So I think I saw a picture of him there.
So let me run
another
down.
FCS All-American.
Okay, good. So let me run down just the guys that I have that are listed that we didn't talk about last week. Tyler Brown, James Madison, safety, 5'10", 193, 80 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 pick. He has 2 seasons of eligibility left. Lance Ingold, he's an edge rusher from Northern Illinois, 6'6", 255, 17 tackles, 2 for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining. We talked about Kamari Brown, Bryce Stevenson, and Anthony Hawkins, Eli Ozick from last week. Here's one, the safety from Robert Morris, Xavier Stiles, 6'2", 3 years of eligibility remaining. He had 36 tackles, 1 pick, 6 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles and 1 fumble recovery. Then the other James Madison player that we talked about, 6'4", 300-pound offensive lineman, played left guard, right guard. He's from James Madison, 1 start, but he also played 382 snaps. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining. Those are the newer guys that we didn't talk about last week.
Now, there is another guy from Illinois, it's a defensive lineman, that is on campus this weekend, taking his official visit. Canaan, maybe? Something like that. I want to say he's like 6'4", 260, defensive edge rusher. Wasn't a starter by any means, but has some Power 4 experience at Illinois. I'm okay with the class that they put together so far. I'm not disappointed as much as some people might be. I'm sure there'll be people who are like to call me crazy, but I have no problem with the FCS All-American kids. I mean, those are kids that probably easily could have played with a group of 5 team.
Well,
let's see what they can do at a Power 4 school.
Exactly what I was just going to say. I was going to say, let's see what they can do. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt at 1 year and see if they break into the starting at least or playing time before I say this was a dud or this was a good pickup. I'm just gonna say at this point, let's wait and see.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is like at least, and I don't want this to sound wrong because Hayden Large was a good pickup out of Dort.
Yeah.
But Bryce George was not out of Ferris State. We're not relying on D2 commitments this year as much as we have in the last few years. Although I do think there is a punter that's looking to commit to Iowa from Simpson, which of all positions, I have less concern about picking up a kid as a punter from a Division II or Division III school. The field's the same length. You're a punter. You can put it in spots. That's fine. I don't care what division or what level you played at. Punting is probably one of those. Now, field goal kicking, I might be a little bit more hesitant, but I think punting is one of those that you could probably pull a kid that played at an NAIA level and still have a very quality punter.
Is he from Australia?
I don't believe so.
Well, then we can't play. He can't play here. He can't play in the NCAAs. You got to be from Australia.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's the one position I would be least concerned about if they said, oh, yeah, we're getting a kid from Division II.
Yeah, but one of the things, though, in the last 5 years that Iowa has relied on more than anything in the world has been their punter.
Iowa's not going to punt next year.
No, I hope not.
Well, he didn't. That's probably, I mean, honestly, I think that's kind of one, other than LeVar Woods leaving, I think that's one of the reasons Reese Dakin left was
he just wasn't
he didn't punt a ton. And when he did, he wasn't as effective as Tory Taylor, and the fans booed him for it. They expected him to be Tory Taylor ×2 when he walked on campus. And I think that's an unfair thing to do to somebody. I think had he gotten, get to his 3rd or 4th year, and I would have considered, if he hadn't picked it up at that point, then yeah, he's probably a bust. But I look for a breakout in year 3, but we'll not see it. Hopefully we don't see it.
We won't see it next year. We'll play Michigan State.
He goes to Michigan State. That's a lot more. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why he wanted to leave Iowa. Is he just, I'm not going to punt as much. Tory Taylor punted 85 times in a year. I punted 30. Where's my use? Where's my value here?
Yeah.
I'm just being optimistic and throwing that out there because that's probably he followed LeVar Woods. Let's put it that way.
They're going to have to get a punter from somewhere. That's all I know. Iowa does not have a punter on the roster, to my knowledge, this year at this point.
I don't think it'll be a problem for Iowa.
I wouldn't think punters would be all that in demand that you couldn't pick up a good FCS kid or a good, even a kid that's punting behind somebody at Tennessee that wants to actually become the starting punter that may not see the field for 2 years. That actually is a fairly good punter. I wouldn't think it would be that difficult. I don't know what the market value is on a punter, but I can't think it would be that bad. It'd be like a backup catcher in Major League. I wouldn't think it'd be that tough.
Well, and there was talk about a kid from Hawaii wanting to potentially come to the mainland and kick. I think he might have been an Australian kid too. I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
I'm
They'll
not
find somebody. I'm
terribly
not
concerned about that one. Yeah.
Kicker. I would be more. I'm more concerned about. Although they picked up the kid from North Dakota.
North Dakota State, yeah.
North Dakota State. So I'm not as concerned with that. And having Caden Burr as a backup, or potentially as the starter, who knows?
Mhm.
He may beat him out. I think that's a good situation. So
Yeah.
not as concerned about those as I would be more like that. But like I said, I'm not as concerned about some of the positions we picked up as we're picking up FCS All-Americans as opposed to getting Division II guys to fill in some of those spots. So, and again, nothing against the D2 guys, because Hayden Large has turned out to be a pretty decent addition to this team. Some of those, like I said, some of those guys are overlooked and they are way better than you anticipate. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and let's see what they can do.
Right. Well, we've got a ball game in about 15 minutes or a little less, and I want to make sure that we get in and watch that. And so we probably should wrap this up, and we'll get back at it next week.
Yep. As always, make sure you give our videos a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Check us out on all the social media platforms that we have. I haven't mentioned the merch store, but it's still there. You can see that at the very beginning of the video. You can scan that QR code, takes you right to the store if you want to buy something. Otherwise, we'll get out of here on the Go Hawks, and let's hope that the women make our weekend a little bit better.
Yes. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.